Great. So before we begin our session, Mandela once said that education is the most powerful tool you can use to sort of change the world. It's really hit me hard. I could resonate with this statement of Mandela's very well, because at some point, this statement emphasizes the importance of education. And as a teacher myself, whenever I have conversations with my colleague teachers about the challenges they face teaching in rural communities, all I keep on getting is yours truly, reading proficiency problem or reading problem. And for today, we have with us right here Lawrence to share with us insights on promoting reading in communities. So at this point, I'll move forward to introducing our resource person, who is in the name of Lawrence Boache Dankwah. So Lawrence has had experience working with multiple organizations in the education space, and he envisions a society where all children will have the competence to solve problems and to consistently grow in and out of their classrooms through the power of education. With the rising speed of globalization through the internet, Lawrence has a strong belief that basic public schools in Ghana must start raising students with a global awareness of the inequality around them. He currently studies on the MSc Education for Sustainable Futures program at the University of Glasgow. And now, to tell us more about promoting reading in communities, ladies and gentlemen, with all the respect you have, help me welcome Lawrence Boache Dankwah. Lawrence, welcome, and over to you if you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Fat. Please, I hope you can hear me.
You're loud and clear, Lawrence.
All right. Once again, good evening to everyone. I believe I'm not a stranger to the network. We've been around, and I'm excited to be here and to be given this opportunity to share my thoughts. It's going to be practical. It's going to be discussion-based, because I'm not here to give a lecture. I'm just here to share my thoughts. So just be cooperative, and feel free to share your ideas, your perspectives as well. I always say that in the social sciences, particularly what we are doing here, there is no one definition. There are multiple reflections, multiple thoughts, and multiple perspectives. So what might work within one context might not work in another context. So I just hope that we'll be able to pick this up and then situate it within our respective context. Okay, so promoting reading in communities. And then before I continue, I think let me especially acknowledge my classmate. I think one of my classmates is on the program, is on the meeting. Abby. So Abby is my classmate on the MSc Education for Sustainable Futures program at the University of Glasgow, and I just want to just give it a shout out. Maybe Abby, you can just come off mute.
Great, Abby, you're almost welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm not ready for this, so I can show my video. But yeah, good evening, everyone. Excited for this session to learn with you.
Fantastic. We're happy to also have you here.
All right. Thank you, Abby. So, so the central objective I have for this session is an area that I've been dealing with. I think I have to leave this one. It's concerned with an area that I've been dealing with as part of my my program, and I naturally took interest in this particular field, and which has to do with promoting reading in multicultural context. What is this doing to me today? Sorry. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, it's visible, Lawrence. Your screen is visible.
What's happening to me? What is this? What is this? Sorry, but I think the slides are messing up.
Quite unfortunate.
What is this? Shh. Oh goodness. Sorry,
Right.
but my slides are messing up.
Right. I'm thinking, is it possible you
Lawrence, do you want to share the link so that Fad can present? Would that help?
Give me a couple of minutes. Let me just sort this out.
fantastic?
Okay.
That would be okay.
So, all right. So my central objective is to promote reading in our multilingual context. And I was saying that this is particularly something that I have been dealing with as part of my coursework. And I find it very interesting to introduce in this particular session. So what is this? Okay. Okay, so let me pick up with this quote from Kate DiCamillo, and she says, reading should not be presented to children as a chore, but a duty. It should be offered as a gift to children. Now, on the basis of this, I just would want us to share our reflections. And the first being that, what memories do you have about reading? My slides are just messing up. Okay, so just tell a brief story, and I'm just inviting anyone to come over to share with us. Did you find any pleasure in reading? Let's take the first one. As a child, I mean, I just want you to take a step back in time to reflect. Did you find any pleasure in reading for the first part? And then what was the experience? What shaped your disposition toward reading as an adult? And who has had the greatest influence in your disposition toward reading? And which spaces of learning do you find most pleasurable for reading? So was in the home, was in the school, or the library? So anyone at all can just come off mute, and then you can just pick any of the points, and then you can share with us.
Fantastic. Feel free to also put it in the chat section if that makes you comfortable. All right, Farida has a hand up. Farida, give it a go.
Okay. Did you find any pleasure in reading as a child? That was the best thing about being a child. Reading was amazing. So for me, yes, I did find a lot of pleasure in reading as a child. And I think because I enjoyed it so much, it was sustained on up until now. That's my own contribution.
Interesting. Anyone else? Anyone wants to come up and share with us? Or maybe I should pick on people. Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna, okay, someone wants to share. Okay, I think I'm going to pick on people. Cynthia.
Hi, Lawrence.
Hi.
Okay, yeah. So did you find any pleasure in reading as a child? Yes, I did. It was literally the only hobby that brought me joy. I can't really remember how I started reading, but I knew for a fact that we always had books around at home, in school, and at the library. So I was introduced to reading at a very young age. Thank you.
Okay, so which of these spaces, I mean, home, school, library? Because personally, I think I never got to enter into a library until I got to the senior high school. So my primary school, we didn't have a library. So, you know, I had heard about a library, but I never stepped into one, you know, and I think the space that really impacted on my pleasure for reading, I think it's the school, in the classroom per se. Those days we used to buy these short novels. You know, in Ghana we say one CD or something like that. You know, these 50 pesos books, and then we really love them. I think the school really impacted on my pleasure for reading. So I just want anyone else to share, and who in particular has had the greatest influence on your.
Right. So Gertrude has their hands up. Gertrude,
Right.
please unmute us.
Yeah, hello. So growing up, my simple answer for the first question would be no. I didn't have pleasure in reading, and that's because my mom is not educated, but my dad is a bit educated. So when I grew up in the house, there were no like books or anybody telling you to read. But then I remember when I was hitting like my early teens, my grandfather, he loved to read. He would read graphics, we watch the football news and everything. And so I was an observant child, and I drew closer to him, and that's how I started reading. And then I started reading because I had to read for school as well. So fast forward, let's say like a couple of years back, I discovered that like I actually find peace in reading, and then I admire people that read or like know a lot about books. So right now, I feel like if I was introduced way earlier, I would enjoy it more.
Great.
Inspiring. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cynthia, Farida, Gertrude.
Elizabeth also has a hand up.
Right.
Elizabeth, feel free.
As many as can share, we'll be glad.
All right, thanks. So I guess mine is similar to that of Gertrude. I also didn't find any pleasure in reading. This is because my English teacher was someone who was so strict on us and also only favored the children from rich homes who always gave him gifts. So because of that, I didn't like English as a subject and therefore didn't find any pleasure in reading.
Interesting. Well, interesting views, interesting perspectives. Maybe I should take the last person. I believe going forward, this will shape our discussion. Maybe I'll take the last person. I've not heard from any guy apart from myself.
Well, okay, Lawrence, I think let me just take the last slot. So I despised reading very well. I just didn't like reading. There was one incident that changed my perspective about reading. So there was this teacher, science teacher. He came in and then gave us roles. So in our class, there were, let's say, row leaders. Not row, but then row, R-O-W leaders.
Yeah.
When he appointed me one of these row leaders, he started being sort of like vigilant, paying keen attention to his row leaders. From there, I started reading because if you miss a mark, he would cane you. So I started reading out of fear. Right.
Wow, interesting. Reading out of fear, not having access to books, and I think that you know some have had the privilege of having that pleasure to read. Farida did mention the fact that growing up, she naturally maybe depending on the environment, depending on her home, depending on the setting where she was brought up, similar to Cynthia, they enjoyed reading. And for some of us, we grew up in a very tensious, toxic environment. I can imagine, Gertrude's experience. Your parents are not literate in the sense of the word, even though we'll get to deconstruct that going forward. But you grew up in an environment where the access to those opportunities and resources are not there. And in the school where you are supposed to find that pleasure to, it's being done with a cane. So it becomes very difficult to mediate between these two spaces. But then going forward, I just wanted, I hope I've not missed my slide. Okay, so I want us to use this as a guiding principle. And the principle being, the first principle being reading. Okay, so when we talk about reading, what is the inference? Promoting reading in communities. So that if I do skimming, is that what we aspire to achieve within this session? Or if I do scanning of the text, which we have diverse reading skills, what really do I want to achieve? And oftentimes, when we talk about reading, we are also looking at literacy. Okay, when we talk about reading, we are looking at literacy. And the argument has been that reading, in what sense? Reading in what sense? Because then reading is about interpreting text. And in time past, the narrowed conception of literacy had to do with print. So what had been printed on paper, interpreting text, decoding text that had been written on paper. But then we realized that in the 21st century, the definition of literacy and how that it ties to reading is changing. You know, today we have different ways of interpreting text. And the most phenomenal or the most significant way of interpreting text is not merely on paper, but on screen. Okay, so I just want to create this guiding principle so that we are able to widen our perspective about what really reading is all about. That in the 21st century, we need to shift from the narrowed view of what literacy is, you know, teaching people to read and write. Now, in the Ghanaian context, let me just ask this quickly. In the Ghanaian context, what is literacy in the Ghanaian context? Anyone at all can come off mute. It could be also in another context, in the Nigerian context, because I know other nationalities are here. I'll be from the Philippines. What is literacy in your context? What counts as literacy? How do you measure whether or not someone is literate?
I think for us here, I'm in Lagos, Nigeria. I think for us here is mainly once you are able to read and write, it doesn't matter what you do with that reading and writing knowledge. Just can you read, can you write? That says whether or not you're literate.
Interesting. So reading and writing. Okay, anyone else?
Gertrude has a hand up. Gertrude, give it a go.
Yeah, I think it's also the same in Ghana, read and write, but then for Ghana, it's more like just knowing your alphabet and numbers and being able to do basic communication.
Okay, interesting. So reading and writing, communication cuts across. Anyone else? Maybe I'm going to pick on someone. I like picking on people. It's very good.
Lawrence, pick on guests.
Richard Mama.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, Richard. Richard, are you in Ghana?
No, I'm in Nigeria.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, Richard, you can share something with us. Literacy.
Essentially, reading and writing.
Okay, reading and writing. Common theme. Abby, literacy.
Yeah, I guess in young people it's more on reading and writing, and currently yeah, even in older people, I mean, and recently we are adding more on digital as literacy.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So the question then is reading and writing what language? Because in Ghana, literacy is reading and writing English. So the question is, if I can read and write in my mother tongue, because then I want to remind us that the objective is to promote reading in a multilingual context. How many languages are in Nigeria?
That's an interesting question. I don't know if what the Nigerians know, but we have multiple, too many to count.
How many languages are in Ghana?
I think it's over
250 something.
So if I can read and write in Ewe, am I literate?
Yes,
Ideally, yes, you are.
I'm literate.
It's a tricky question.
So I can read and write in Ewe, but then I don't have access to opportunities. Because I mean, I can't read and write in English. Now you enter several Ghanaian classrooms and literacy or reading is the ability to read and write in English. That's the definition. Anyway, I'm not dwelling on that. I just want to provoke your thoughts about that. Think about that carefully. How have we defined literacy? Who has, you know, what I don't want to be controversial as well, but then the argument as a post-colonial country, and even I believe EduSports, Cynthia, you are running a post-colonial course, I suppose. So, you know, what are the colonial imprints that have made us to define literacy as the ability to read and write in English? when if people or children can read and write in their mother tongue, that is regarded illegitimate, you know. But then let's hold on for now. Now, again, when we talk about promoting reading, are we trying to say promoting reading awareness or reading culture? Because whatever we are doing in our sports or in our communities, we don't want to confuse these two terms, because we are likely to, be promoting reading awareness, whereas we are not promoting a reading culture. So then I want to ask, what are the characteristics of a reading culture? Because what we really want to do is to promote a reading culture and not reading awareness. So what will we say if you can just type one word in the chat which defines a reading culture? I'll be grateful. So let's go. Let's do that within 30 seconds. I'll be reading from the chat. What are some characteristics of a reading culture? In one word, finding pleasure in reading. Frida, yes, well, sir. 20 more seconds. Okay. Trying to read anything you see. Elizabeth, Cynthia, consistency in reading. Anyone else? Anyone else? 10 more seconds. Oh, they are not coming again. All right. To save us the time, we can go forward. And I hope my slides won't mess me up. Good. So the emphasis now is on reading culture. I mean, we are not merely promoting reading awareness. We want to promote reading culture. So basically, a reading culture is an environment where reading is valued, promoted, and actively encouraged. So by doing that, we want to situate this within our communities and our sports, where children and young people do read habitually. Now, some of us did share experiences where, reading, we have to be caned, before we read. So that isn't reading culture, but then it becomes a culture. Culture is a way of life, based on popular definitions. So when you have a reading culture, what you are doing is actually that there is a habit for reading. You do it for leisure, as some of you have already said, and then you are not doing it necessarily to pass an exam, which is what happens in Ghana and in several contexts, in the Philippines, I suppose, in Nigeria, or wherever you're joining us from. Normally, young people would want to read, just to pass the exam and then get the grades and then go their way. And contrary to popular opinions that if you want to hide something from a Black man, put it in a book. Very controversial. I don't want to go there as well, whether it's an insult to the Black person or we have to analyze that within a context. But yeah, we are not reading to pass exams. And then there's modeling. When society is characterized by diverse people, we have adults and we have children. And even within the context of a school, we have teachers. When we have a reading culture, teachers are not caning students to read, but then teachers are modeling out a habit for reading, whereby students look at what teachers model and then they pick up after that. Then there is an encouragement. So you create a conducive ambience or environment for reading to take place, or for you to be able to cultivate a habit for reading. And then Gertrude did mention the fact that the resources were not available. If resources are not available, you are unable to promote a culture of reading, and then coupled with the necessary support. And that is why I believe EduSports exists. The notion that the fact that you are raising a library does not mean people will read. Daniel of Lead for Ghana, I think when he started Lead for Ghana, prior to starting Lead for Ghana, I think he mobilized some funds to venture into a library or something. And I think along the line, realize that, even though you have a library, people are not reading. you can give someone a book, but then it doesn't mean that the person will read the book. So the necessary support to cultivate or nurture a habit of reading is very important going forward. All right. So I would want us to break into maybe have a breakout session, and then we can discuss these three themes, which will guide us into the next session. So the first being that, can we map out some key stakeholders in promoting reading in our communities? And then in trying to promote a culture of reading, as I've mentioned, we would have to bridge the gap between schools, homes, and then the sports or the library. But then how do we go about this? How do we go about weaving the thread between the school, the home, and then the library or the sport? And then what are the contextual challenges we face in our respective communities? So I don't know, Fat, if you can go into breakout rooms, and then
Right.
lots of time, maybe we can do this within 10 minutes and then we'll be back. And I think I'm going to type the questions in the chat.
All right, so you should be able to join your breakout room now. I still have Rama over here. Let me sign on. Fantastic. So Lawrence, that will be, let's see, at 7:12.
All right. Okay, I'll be joining one of the groups. Which one should I join? Maybe you can put me in one of the groups.
Yes, I think you are in room 4, so you can join room 4.
How do I join? I can't find.
All right, I'm coming. I would assign you, I think.
Okay, I think I found it. Yeah.
All right. So please, you will.
So and Deborah, are you there? Deborah.
I am here. I'm with you.
Yeah. So Deborah, we are discussing how we can map out some key stakeholders in promoting reading in our communities, and we want to know if you can share any key stakeholders.
Okay, so presently I am in Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
Right? So yeah, I'm from Nigeria, and I presently reside at somewhere one rural area, one undeserved area in the in Nigeria. So stakeholders, really, I would only have probably one or two to point out if we are really going to promote reading culture. And it's going to be there's this particular NGO that promotes reading culture in one of our environments, P Foundation.
Okay.
PEA Foundation, yes, they try to create libraries to different communities, most times rural communities. So that way, I believe they promote reading culture. So younger ones, especially, they most times target the younger ones.
Okay.
So that NGO, I think they are one of the key stakeholders I can point out here in
Okay.
Nigeria. Yes.
Right. So but when you take a local community FAD,
Yes.
like Saka Saka in the northern
Sorry?
region of Ghana.
When you
Sorry.
take,
Yeah, a local community like
okay,
I don't know much about Nigeria, but then let's just take a local community. I want to find out, maybe FAD can share. Um,
okay,
so like FAD teaches in the northern part of Ghana in a community called Saka Saka. So
okay,
maybe in Saka Saka,
okay.
FAD, if you are to map out key stakeholders that can help nurture a culture of reading in the community, who are those going to be?
All right. So for key stakeholders, I would say would have parents first.
Okay.
Would also have teachers. Right. So there'll be
Okay.
traditional religious leaders,
Okay.
and to a larger extent, non-governmental organizations, as Deborah mentioned.
Okay. All right. So, Praise, do you want to add anything in your context, Zimbabwe?
Praise, you're on mute. You're on mute.
You are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
I would also say it's very important to have the
Praise's network.
Oh, I think the network is bad.
Exactly. I think she's facing some bandwidth problems at her end. So
Yeah. All right. Then I think we can discuss the next point, which is how can we bridge the gap between the community, the school, and then the home? Because I think after mapping out, we realized that parents representing the home, teachers representing the school, and then religious leaders representing the community, isn't it? Traditional authorities and adults in the community. So how are we going to bridge the gap? You know, I think that if we are going to be able to bridge the gap, we first would have to realize or acknowledge whether or not even is there a gap at all between the school, the community, and the home. Is there a gap at all? Right. So if we are to situate the library within the center of the puzzle, right, how do we connect the three so that our spot is at the center, but then the community, the library, and then, sorry, the community, the school, and then parents are centrally focused within the library? How are we going to bridge that gap?
fantastic. So for Lawrence, I would say we sort of bring all of them together. So principal stakeholders, the three principal stakeholders you mentioned, and then we make them realize the importance of reading. So as we've situated the library in the community, we bring them together, make them understand the benefits of reading, to the extent reading is going to take their community, and then how it's going to help shape the people, let me say the indigents of that particular community. So as a strategy, this is what I have.
Deborah, how about you? Yeah, Praise, you're back. Maybe you can pick it and then we'll come back to Deborah.
Oh, I'm very sorry, my network is not stable.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so firstly, I'm starting about all of this reading and stakeholders because I've never been in an environment where I have that, so I'm learning it now. And I would say the same thing as Fadi said, that it's very important to have a support system or we have NGOs who supporting and providing anything like that. And also some teachers who have some knowledge about what you want to do and who be able to share that knowledge. having people who have the vision, who wants to empower others to do the reading and all that.
Interesting. So following up on that, now that we have been able to map out the key stakeholders, we just want to look at how we are going to bridge the gap. And we were saying that we first have to acknowledge whether maybe in your context, there's no gap at all. Maybe in your context, the teachers, the community, and then the NGO, like maybe they are one. But we were creating a picture where we said that the library or the sport is at the center. We want to promote reading. The library is at the center. And then attached to the center is the community, the school, and then the parents. So how do we bridge the gap? How do we make sure that they are all in a synergy? There's some form of the cohesion, So Deborah,
Sorry.
maybe Deborah can share his thoughts.
Sorry, Lawrence, not to cut you short. We have just a minute to give.
Oh, wow. Okay, then maybe let's talk about the contextual challenges, and then we can go. So what are some of the challenges we face in our communities in terms of promoting reading? I think that is also very important. We can touch on one each.
Okay, so I would, sorry.
Yeah, Deborah, go
All
ahead.
right, so I would say it's lack of understanding. It's the fact that there is a friction between the parents, the home, and the religious leaders. We have this friction. So we don't have this balance. Most of them, especially the parents, some of the parents don't really believe in reading. We have some parents, especially in some rural communities here in Nigeria, we have some parents who just send their children to school just for the fact that, okay, they have to go to school, but they really don't believe in what reading can do to their children. So there is this friction, there is a lack of balance. So that's one of the problems. So there was a time I saw a parent, and the child wanted to go and read in the library, and the parent said no. Why? Because she said, okay, there is something you have to go to do at home. And the child came to me and was explaining all of that to me. So I had to talk to the parent, to the mother rather, that okay, there are benefits to reading. So I also feel that the fact that you mentioned the point about modeling, proper modeling, it's really necessary in our community. Those of us that really understood the benefit of reading, I think we should carry it out properly and model it properly, that the parents can also be convinced, then get their children into it. So I think that's just it for me.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Fat, is our time up, or we can continue?
No, our time is up.
So all right. So we are all back. Can you see my screen, or so? Hello.
Yeah, yes, your screen is no longer being shared.
Okay. So I'm going to invite one person from the first breakout room, room 1. Just come off mute, and then anyone at all you can share with us.
Sorry, which one is room 1? I didn't see the room number.
Okay, anyone at all can come off mute and then share with us.
I don't think everybody's back, Lawrence.
Oh, okay.
We're just 6 here.
Fat, is everyone back?
Lawrence was 6, yeah. Oh, all right. So they will be joining shortly.
All right. Okay, so while they join, I think for the sake of time, we can pick one person. Joy, if you can come up off mute, please, and then share with us what went on in your breakout room.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Loud
can
and
hear
clear.
you.
Okay, during our broadcast session, we spoke about what are the key stakeholders in promoting reading in our community. And we discussed that teacher is the first stakeholder, followed by the parents. And some of our team mentioned friends or colleagues of the students in the school as one of the critical stakeholders. So we also talked about how we can bridge the gap between schools, homes, and libraries to nurture the culture of reading. So I think we discussed that we should create more awareness about the benefits of reading, and also speaking to parents who doesn't understand why reading is beneficial to their children. So I don't have more information on that. I think our team lead we discussed on that. So, and what are the contextual challenges we face in our communities? So we spoke about insecurity of the location of the library. That if the library is not in a secure place, parents may not want to release their children to visit the library. We also said that if parents are not aware about the benefits of reading or visiting the library, they would think their children are just going there to waste time, so they won't allow them to go. So those are the things that we discussed.
Interesting.
We talk about it if you need more.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you very much. I'm going to pick up on, I think I'm going to pick up on one more person. Just volunteer and then you come off mute and share with us what you discussed in your breakout room.
Lauren, should I help you with that?
Okay, Fad, you can take it.
So I think Rama is here. Please, if you can unmute and then share with us what's happened in your breakout room.
Hello.
Hi, Rama.
Good evening.
Good evening. You're welcome.
Thank you. I was in the same group with Joy, so I think she has said everything.
All right. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
At least it was good hearing your voice. I mean.
All right, I think Lawrence, Carlos,
okay.
Carlos is here with us.
You guys are calling people in the same group. We were all in the same group.
Yeah, we're all in the same group.
What?
We were all in the same group, you know.
Interesting.
Okay, all right. Maybe Abby. Or Abby was also in the same group.
Hi. I came from group 3. So actually it was me and Richardo talk in the group, and we focus more on how to bridge the school, home, and libraries. And we talk about having an active book club. I'm sorry if I might be repeating other answers. I was not able to hear it earlier. Anyway, we look at book club as and reading as a communal project. So especially in my context with indigenous communities. So reading is not something that is individual. So it's very important to work on it in a communal context, community context. Second is the importance of having a reading teacher. So Richard highlighted that not all teachers are reading teachers. And I agree with him on that. So having someone who is very passionate, who has the patience, because that's really important, the patience in teaching reading, who knows the different strategies to do that, and how to develop materials that are helpful in reading. A reading teacher is really important in that case. And lastly, I shared about having contextualized materials. So maybe this one can also answer part 3, because in my experience working with indigenous communities in the Philippines, a lot of schools are using context insensitive, if I may say, context insensitive materials. So imagine indigenous children reading about Disney or anything that they can't relate to. But in reality, there are a lot of stories that community leaders can use in this reading experiences or in this reading spaces. So actually, my friend, just to share quickly, I have this friend, or she's a teacher, grade 1 teacher, and what she did is that she collected a lot of stories. We call it ambahan, stories from community leaders, and these stories she translated it into a book. And then illustration is something that is community sensitive. So using their actual scenario in creating this in this book. So the students or the participants of the reading sessions can actually relate to the stories. So that's it, Lawrence.
Hi, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, everyone who has shared so far. Interesting. So we've been able to map out the key stakeholders, NGOs, parents, teachers. In our group, we spoke about religious leaders or traditional leaders. And, you know, amazing friends. I've never thought that, you know, friends or colleagues could be stakeholders in the reading process. We've discussed the contextual challenges, interesting discussion, insecurity, you know, sometimes parents who do not value reading, probably because they've not been to school. So, or, you know, not being literate in the sense of how we have defined literacy, you know. So let's go forward, and then my time is almost up. But then we can take this quote from Kate again. She says that it distresses me that parents insist that their children read or make them read. The best way for children to treasure reading is to see the adults in their lives reading for their own pleasure. And I believe there's something that we've touched on, and Abby did touch on that, the fact that we must have reading teachers. And so if we are volunteers in EduSport, it's very important that we are resourceful ourselves and we are able to model that behavior, that attitude, you know, to the children that we are trying to nurture or, you know, cultivate for reading. So this is very interesting. The fact that in homes, you know, growing up, my mom will insist that I should take my book and read. I should put the TV off, you know, she'll be screaming in the home. I never saw her read. At least she tried, because sometimes she would just, you know, call us and give us the Bible. You know, we read in the local language for her, you know. So sometimes on Sunday she would just gather us and then we would just be reading the Bible to her and stuff like that. So she tried, you know. But just to wrap up the session, I started this conversation along the line that we are looking at it within multilingual context. And we did establish the fact that based on wherever we are coming from, there are diverse, numerous languages, indigenous languages in our communities. So in EduSport, we cannot nurture a habit for reading if we do not tap into local knowledge and languages. It's very important. Now, an effective sport, and I put sport because I want to situate this within our own context, must strive to improve the reading environment in the home, the school, and community simultaneously. And that's where the challenge is. Because then the child goes to school, spends about, is it 8 hours or 6 hours? 8 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
And
8 hours.
8 hours. And then comes back home and spends about 24, so about 14 hours, isn't it, at home, yes. Right? And then we know that the home and the community is merged together. The boundaries are not really clear, right? So if already the child is being caned and forced to read at school, when the child comes to the sports, there must be something unique about the sports. If there is nothing unique about the sport, there must be a thread where the child is able to connect what he or she does at school to what he or she does at home, to what he or she experiences in the community. And this must be done simultaneously. Now, how do we do this? Let's look at some practical ways we can do this. Now, the first one, Abby did touch on it, is to ask children to get stories from adults at home. You know, when we were growing up in Ghana, and I believe in several parts of the world, we had our own folk tales, you know, and one of the ways that we can bridge that gap is for us to be, we were talking about helping students and parents to value reading. And one of the ways they can come to the knowledge of reading is when children come to them and value their linguistic repertoire. Linguistic repertoire in the sense that these parents, they have some oral traditions, oral cultures that have been transmitted to them, but they are not being used, probably in our sports, probably in our schools. You know, we are so much focused on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Hansel and Gretel and those people. But you see, if we really want to nurture a habit for reading, and again, we are not talking about awareness, we are talking about a habit, something which is regular, something which takes into, which factors in the socio-cultural environment of the child, then the parent has to be drawn in. So if the child closes from the sports or goes to the library and comes back home and is like, Mommy, you know, I need a story. Tell me just one story. When that child comes to the sports or the library, you help that child to use that oral story, translate that into writing, you know. So naturally, after writing, that child will read what he or she has written. Number two, we can invite parents. So we are talking about bridging the gap. We can invite parents to a performance by the children. And that's what sometimes we do at our sports with the festivals, the literacy festivals. And, you know, in Ghana, and I believe in much, today we have a very diverse international community on this call. I love it. You know, in Ghana, we have something called the Our Day. So at the end of the term, every year, that is when our parents will come to the school. Now, this is not a school, this is a sport, this is a local library. One of the ways that we can bridge the gap is when we invite parents there often. How are they going to do that? How are we going to do that? We must begin to partner with institutions. It's not, you know, the library is a learning center. So if we really want to nurture an atmosphere for reading, where reading is valued in the whole community, parents must come to the library or the spot often. So one of the ways we can do that is to partner with a health institution. Oh, come and give a talk on free maternal, or come and give a talk on maternal care, come and give a talk on breast cancer, come and give a talk, you know, on menstrual hygiene, anything that will interest them. Fire service, you can call them, oh, today let's have a session with adults on how to prevent fire outbreak. Some of these communities are farming communities. By doing that, we draw them to the spot, and then we can loan books to the parents there. Once they've come there to search for their own interest, we can loan books to them at the spot. Now, we can also collaborate with schools within the community. And I think, I don't know, maybe Akumadan, is Carlos still around?
Yes, I believe so.
Carlos, maybe you can come off mute and share with us. I think your community has done something like this in time past.
Can you come again?
Collaborating with schools to loan books. I think your sport has done something like this in time past, isn't it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so how did it go? Briefly.
So that was during the COVID-19 time. That was when it was very effective.
Okay.
So we contacted the headmistress of the schools, and they told us they don't have problem if parents will allow their kids to come for them. So they gave us the assurance to also convince parents for them to allow their kids to come and take the book. So when a child wants the book, he or she will tell the parent, and the parent will also seek permission from the school teachers, and they also say that, oh, you can go, we are aware of that. So they will come and loan the books.
Interesting. So perfectly. In our various communities, thank you, Edu. We just have to collaborate with schools. Sometimes it can be the daycare, a kindergarten, in the primary school. Some of these schools do not have books. We already touched on access to the books. So you just collaborate with the school. When I was at the so in Kumasi, I think the Ghana Library Authority used to come around with the books, kind of a mobile library, because the students were not going to the library. So now they had to bring the library to us. So they come to the school and they loan the books to the kids. Sometimes they have to pay like maybe 5 cedis or something like that, but we can begin to do that. Then organizing literature circles, where folk tales and illustrations, some of the books are very textual. Now, if you are inculcating or nurturing a habit for reading, you want to give them books that resonates with them, books that reflect their interests. So books with illustrations are very helpful. Books where the local culture is represented is very helpful. Then we've touched on mobile libraries. I'm not going to go into detail because of time, where books are loaned to families. So one of the ways we can bridge the gap in nurturing or improving on reading is for us to go to, as volunteers, we can go to the homes, and loan the books to the parents and tell them that, look, I've come, I want your child to read because reading is important. So you know what, I'm going to loan this book to you as a family. And sure, the children may not be able to take that initiative themselves, but as volunteers, we can bridge that gap between the community and then the sports. Now, in our sports, within the sport, we can create large signs encouraging reading. Sometimes this can be done in our local language. It doesn't always have to be in English. Sometimes, then again, it can be in the local language, right? And then story time in languages of their community, select culturally appropriate literature. We've touched on this already. You don't want to go and give them something that they really cannot see themselves in. Now, in the literature, the argument has been that sometimes if you train children in their mother tongue, it helps them. They are able to develop strong thinking or critical thinking skills. Then they can build on that to learn a second language. So in Ghana, or Nigeria, or the Philippines, or Zimbabwe, you can look at ways of blending that, leveraging the local language, so that there are many times that personally, when I lacked knowledge and understanding, I can say that I really belittled the potency of the local language in nurturing a habit for reading. Not until I started schooling here in the UK and I began to read and realize that some time ago, I even published an article in my News Ghana ridiculing the local language on a serious note. So after I started reading and getting more insights, I just realized I was just being emotional back there. But I don't know if now I'm becoming an advocate for local languages or whatever.
I believe so.
But it's very important, that the signs are clear that we nurture reading by leveraging on the resources in the community, match reader interest, make them feel they have their voice, allowing students to create a simple book for themselves. And then they take the story from their parents and then they translate it into books for themselves. Making stories come alive. I was at Seven Oaks School, and it was interesting. When I was at Seven Oaks School, they had this, I think it was a English arts class. So what happened was that after they had critically analyzed the text, the reading, what they were treating in class, after that, the teacher allowed them to act it out themselves. Now, you really wouldn't see this in any Ghanaian, I can talk about the Ghanaian context because I'm familiar with that. You wouldn't really see anything like that in the English classroom. And one of us was talking about the fact that we were keen to even learn the English language. But the beauty of it is for you to see that these kids have analyzed the text and they are learning. We call something embodied ways of learning. They are thinking about it. They are using various tonations to portray the text, animate the text, and let the text come alive after they've read it themselves. And this is something we can do in our sports so that the setting and the ways of reading in our sports factors the embodied way. Sometimes it can be music. We can really transform our sports so that they don't really fashion like the English classroom where canes are used and abused and all that. Now, quickly wrap up. Encourage student authors holding essay and speech contests. Carpon is doing marvelous with that. So we'll not go into detail. Complementing these with extrinsic motivation, rewards, and stuff like that. Now, let me end the session on this note with the influence of technologies. I started this conversation again with the fact that the idea of literacy, has been widened. The conversation now has been broadened. So it's not only about literacy on print. I can tell you there are most kids today, they will never open a book, but they will read on a phone. They will read on a laptop, they'll read on a phone. So the influences of technology on reading habits are changing. They are changing. And it's high time that we all leverage the influence of technology in our sports. It could be video. Sometimes it could be that some of the kids have phones. JHS, the junior high school students, some of them have phones, right? So we can really leverage on technologies to improve on the reading culture in our various communities. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is the board games. Various, we have to inculcate diverse games, icebreakers in particular. We just want to create that environment where they see reading to be something pleasurable and not, as Kate says, one which is out of compulsion. So thank you very much. And if there are any questions and answers, maybe we can pick them now and then.
Right. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for such wonderful insights. As norm, feel free to unmute and then ask your question, or virtually raise your hand. I'll call on you, and then you sort of like ask your question. However, you can also put it in the chat section. I'll read it out to Lawrence, and then he'll be happy to answer your question.
Okay. No?
Right.
Can you hear me?
Exactly. Give it a go.
Okay, so I want to ask, what about the issue of urbanization, where children from another language, like a state in Nigeria now, we have so many languages, like we said from the beginning of this program. So from, like me, I'm from the Eastern Nigeria, but I grew up in the West, where they speak another language entirely. So how do you manage that? Like children that has a background of another native language, living in another area with a different language. So how do you manage such situation? I don't know.
Good question.
Because in my own case now, although I understand my native language from the East, but now I cannot write in that native language. I can't read. I struggle when I want to read it, but the Western language, I can read it and I can speak it, but it's not my native language. So what do you do in such cases?
Interesting question. So if I get the question right, there is no predominant language. For example, let's assume that the child was speaking Yoruba, right? And then comes to Lagos, and the predominant and comes to Lagos. And are you saying like there is no one within that certain speaking Yoruba? Is it the case?
Yes.
So it's like the child cannot speak the language at all, right?
Yes.
So in that case, it's going to be difficult because you need someone who can speak that language, right? You need someone who can speak that language, and at the same time, build on that that child has to be taught in that language, in that first language, and treat English language as a second language. Yes. I don't know whether you get me.
Yes, I get you.
Yeah, so you need, if that is the only way that child communicates, if that is the only language, because even in Ghana, I taught in an urban school. In one classroom, you can find maybe children speaking about 3 or 4 languages. So if you have one child speaking about 3 or 4 languages, the argument is that there can be a predominant language. So let's just say Lagos. In Lagos, there is Yoruba, there is Igbo, and I don't know, there is Ikoyi. Ikoyi is a word.
Maybe Hausa too.
Hausa, good. So Hausa, 3 languages, isn't it? But then sometimes there can be a predominant language. Sometimes there can be a predominant language. In this case, let's say Igbo. So that predominant language is chosen over the other languages, right? So in the Ghanaian context, if it's tree, which is predominant in the classroom or in that community, then the tree will be chosen to help nurture reading habits over the other languages. I hope this helps. But then if anyone else wants to share, you can also come off mute and then add your reflections.
Right. So Lawrence, just
Yeah,
a
thank you.
follow-up.
That was the first.
Great. So just a follow-up in currently. Yeah, Lawrence.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So as we would want to nurture reading habits or something like of that sort, usually I think in Ghana, hello. In Ghana, English is our lingua franca, right? And then most teachers would most definitely use English in teaching their subject. If you are found teaching your subject with a local language, it becomes a problem. What's your take on that too? You see, most parents even would like to see their kids read in English. They get that joy when they see their kids read in English. However, you're also seeing that we adopt the local language, something like P, to help them read.
Okay.
You see, so what's your take on this?
So there's an official government policy, and that policy, the language of instruction policy in Ghana says that the language of instruction from primary 1 to primary 3 is supposed to combine the use of both English and the local dialects. But then research or the studies have proven that from primary 4 to JHS, teachers are not doing this in practice. So the issue you are raising is more of a language policy issue where government is not willing to come to the fact that in practice, the policy is not being heeded to. Regardless of the research that has proven that children, for example, if you take a country like China, right, if you take some of these international countries, international context, most of them have done tremendous things learning only in their local dialect or treating their local dialect as the main, language, official lingua franca. The problem also lies in the fact that in Ghana, as well as several post-colonial countries or societies, there's the likelihood of having a tribal conflict, which is likely to destabilize the whole political system. Because then whose language are you going to choose over who? Do you get it? So in a multilingual context, for example, if you are teaching in the junior high school, you realize that maybe one child is speaking Twi, you choose the predominant language. Right. And that's where the challenge is. The fact that our policymakers are not willing to give us assessments which reflect the multilingual languages we have in Ghana. So if you teach the child in combine that child will get the understanding, but there will be a deficit in the English language. There should be a corresponding assessment where the child is given choices to choose. I want to write my exam in Twi. I want to write my exam in Igbo. So it's more of a policy problem than a practical problem. Personally, if I should go back to the class, I will not despise the use of the local language. I won't, in the face of research, right? But then at the same time, we have to be careful so that we don't create that deficit where they are not unable to, advance. So it's more of a policy problem. And I don't know what will break us from this colonial colonial mindset.
I tell you, it's quite interesting. Wow. Right. Feel free to put your question in the chat section. I'll read it to Lawrence and then he'll be very happy to answer your question. Also, if you think unmuting and then speaking also works for you, kindly do so. Great. Well, in the absence of any question, I think it's been a wonderful empowerment session. And then Lawrence, what would you what would be your last word just to draw the curtain to the end of the session for us? What would be your last word?
So the last or final words is the fact that I just want to encourage everyone. I think we are doing a good work at EduSports. I think volunteers are trying as much as possible to create that space, the opportunities for children to flourish, I think we are doing a marvelous work, and I would particularly want to thank everyone for whatever you are doing in your respective countries. We are not being paid for what we do. It's voluntary, but I just want you to have that positive mindset. It's not going to be easy in terms of creating that ambience for children to love reading, especially if you find yourself in an environment where homes are not corresponding. Parents are not literate in the sense of the word. And the backgrounds that are supposed to help nurture the children to be in tune with the academic life is not there. It can be very, very frustrating. But if you have a positive mindset, it is possible. If you keep pushing, it is possible. We all come from such backgrounds. But I believe that if we have that positive mindset and we would reflect on those who have had the greatest influence on our lives in terms of reading, I think we can do it. We can also have great influence on other people's lives to love reading. So thank you all very much for joining the call and for contributing to this particular session. I've learned a lot, and yeah, I'll see you some other time.
Great. Thank you very much, Lawrence, for honoring our invitation and then making time off your busy schedule to sort of like share with us your rich experience and insight. Wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much too for joining. Most certainly, I can't forget to sort of thank you. It's been a wonderful time. We all would attest to the fact that this has been a very informative session, and I believe that as we're going back to our sports communities, going back to our schools, wherever we may find ourselves, we are going to incorporate in wherever we do these strategies shared by Lawrence and then everyone over here. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.